In this part of our tutorial, we're going to show you how to access elements of Boolean, character, and string arrays. It's not so different from accessing elements of any of the number arrays we've been through so far. So we're going to do that by declaring and initializing an array of each type first, and then we're going to access one element of each array and have it print out. We're also going to use some real-life examples of a true-false test for the Booleans, a list of characters comprising word for the character array, and a team roster with names for the string array. So now we've seen how to access elements within number arrays, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to access elements within arrays of Booleans, characters, and strings. So it's not so different from what we were doing before. I just want to show you exactly how to access elements of each one and what they'll look like once they're printed out. So first things first, we want to create some arrays. So our very first one is going to be an array of Booleans, and we'll call this the true false test, just like before, where we have perhaps a true false exam and the answers to all the questions are either true or false. So here we've just created and initialized an array which contains Booleans, and we've just given them some arbitrary values. Now we want to print out the elements in this array. So what we're going to do is we're going to access a certain element. Let's call this element 2. And we're going to assign it a value, which is going to be true false test. And let's have that be element 2, which will be at position 1. So in this line, we're doing pretty much exactly what we were doing with the numbers. We have to create a Boolean which can hold the value, calling this element 2, and it's going to hold the value of this array, which is the true false test, called on the element in index 1, which will be this one. Remember, index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whereas this is element 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is going to be accessing the second element. We'll have the label text contain that. So we want it to contain element 2, and we need to convert this to a string. Alright, so let's go ahead and run it. And if all goes well, we should get our label text being replaced with element 2 to string, which is false. Let's just wait for this to load here. There we go, variables tutorial. And we see false appearing on the screen here. And that's because the label was assigned the value of element 2. Element 2 was assigned the value of the true false test array at index 1, which happens to be false. Cool, so this is Booleans. Now let's take a look at characters. So we'll create a character array, call this mammoth, and let's give it the values M, then A, then M, then another M, then an O, T, and an H. Alright, so this is our character array, and it contains these 7 characters, and so we'll do the same thing. We'll have to create a character, and this is going to be, I'm going to call this element 5, and this is going to be called on mammoth, this array, and let's access element 5, which will be at index 4. Now no, we're not printing element 2 anymore, printing element 5, and we'll stop it and rerun it. Now the cool thing about character arrays is that there is a way that we can print out every element in this array and have them be printed back to back. So it would print out first an M, then an A, then an M, up until age, so it would print out the characters and it would look just like the word mammoth, as if it was one string rather than an array of 7 characters. And here we have an O, which is indeed the 5th element, which is an array index 4, so index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Cool. So the last type will be strings. So let's just create a random string array, and we called it team roster. And we'll have Nate, we'll have Colin, we'll have Tiffany, and we'll have Kirsten. So these are just some random names I'm putting in here. Just a random team of people, and these people are represented by strings, which are their names. Great way to represent people. So we'll say string, and this will be, call this element 1, so the very first element, and this will be our team roster called on the element at index 0, which is the very first element. And now we want to print out element 1. So we'll stop and rerun this. And although this toString is redundant because it's already a string and there's no use converting a string to a string, we're just going to include it anyway. And these warnings here are just to tell us that these variables aren't used. And that's perfectly okay. It's fine to have unused variables. And we get Nate being printed out. That's because we access the first element of the array team roster. So that's how to access elements in any kind of array. So we've looked at first at integers, then floats and doubles. Now we've seen booleans, characters, and strings. It's the same way to access any element of these arrays. These are single arrays again, not multi-dimensional arrays. We'll look at those a little later. During this part of our tutorial, I showed you how to access elements of Boolean, character, and string arrays. So we accessed elements within what we assigned to be a true-false test array of Booleans. We had a mammoth character array that was just a character array with characters for the word mammoth. And we had a team roster array of strings that had a bunch of names on it, and we accessed an element from each and had them print in our app. So by now you should be able to access elements within any type of array, so these three, the Boolean, characters, and strings, as well as any of the 3 number types, and have them print out on the screen.